welcome. You made it. It is season 5 in the series of how to unscrew yourself. I am of the pure mind of God. I am the resurrection and the life in my body, my finances, my relationships, and my world. I qualify everything in my world with perfection. I am perfection. I am this perfect day, and the life that lives in me is the light that cannot fail. I accept only God's perfection, His good, in my outer circumstances. I know in my heart that God is all in all. I am absolutely not concerned about what happens, because I know wonderful things are happening now. Or more appropriately stated, how to break free from the matrix of dreaming. Liberate yourself from the ball of confusion. Now, you may or may not have noticed by now, depending on how thoroughly you've been applying this or how seriously you've taken it, if you start to act on truth and you start to walk in wisdom, you will be persecuted. I promise you. Now, you're supposed to count that as a blessing. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. You know, it's not going to seem normal. It's not going to seem like, hey, I started moving in this direction and what's going on here? It seems like, the worst that could possibly happen is starting to happen. The reason why is because that's actually in you. It's the ego projection of the simulated dream. It's outside of the allness of creation. And so it's coming up for you to dissolve and destroy it once and for all. So it's essential. It has to happen. Now, to the contrary, you could say, well, if I didn't do anything, then it would have never happened, right? But in reality, that is ultimately not the case, because what would have happened is, here's what it looks like. When you begin the ascension process, you speed up the inevitable because you are equipped to handle it. See, the inevitable is one day you're going to leave the physical meat sack anyway. You're going to meet your maker one way or the other. Now, your choice is that you can meet wisdom while you're still in the flesh, and therefore you can rise and ascend out of it, and you can escape the matrix of dreaming, and you can know the Father, the truth that sets you free. If you do it this way, then heaven is at hand right now, and you will rise out. Because if you persist as others have persisted, you will succeed as others have succeeded. You will see the falling away of a fear or a compulsion. It'll fall away like an arrow in the midst of flight, because you no longer give it the wings to fly. It takes courage to move forward. It takes strength. And strength is from the Spirit. And you have that strength. And you have that courage. Because you are created in the image and likeness of the Almighty One. So now it's time for you to stand firm on that faith, in that dominion, and to use the tools. So PTT is a very advanced technique, although it looks uber simplistic. The more that you use it, the more profound your experience of how vast it is becomes. Now, I'd also like to suggest, if you haven't seen it below, there is the opportunity. If you want to work one-on-one with me, you can get a customized, expanded PTT training that is really a condensed version of our entire 30-day workshop experience that we just did. And the people below all attended that workshop experience, the testimonials, and you can see some of the results there. And what's good about this situation is it's only for limited time. It's while I am allocating the time for this. And the reason why I'm doing it is not just for altruistic reasons. I don't need to give away my time. It's not necessary, okay? But I do this because it helps me develop and grow and to refine my skills as a teacher. Because the more I engage, the more I learn, and it helps me bring forth even, deeper and more penetrating technologies as they evolve. 2021, well, actually in 2020, it was a really monumental, pivotal point in everyone's lives because we've never experienced anything like that before. And so what I did is leaned on the wisdom that I had gotten throughout the years, going through the Lyme disease, going through, all of the things that I had to go through with the PTSD and the bankruptcy. And, I've had to lean on wisdom to support me every step of the way. And that was the one thing that was prophesied over my life. And this came true. Every prophecy came true. And I'm so astounded by this. I was brought into this knowledge a long time ago, and it took many, many, many years to evolve. And I had gone to a church meeting, and a sweet old lady, I say old, she was in her 70s, I'd imagine. And she was the sweetest thing you could imagine. And people would come up and she'd prophesy their destiny over them. And I went up with my best friend at the time, and he, was 10 years younger than me. He was like a younger brother in my realm. And she spoke unto his life and said, "You are going to experience massive business success." And at the time I was like, well, she must have us confused, because I thought, well, obviously him and I were in business together, and I was, more business focused essentially than he was. But, ultimately came to pass. He built a lot of companies, sold his recent one for $50 million. And he's ultimately, big into the business side of things. He loves manufacturing and all the ins and outs and the mechanics of that. So she nailed it on the head. And many times throughout the years, he would call and remind me, as my wisdom was unfolding, "Hey, that lady nailed you. She said it all. It's all happening." And she said this to me. She said, "You are going to go through some very, very, very tough times." She said, "But you are not to be concerned, because God will be with you every step of the way." She said, "And the end result is that you are a Paul in the modern times." She said, "You will solve the unsolvable riddle, and you will be a motivational speaker, but you will be one for God, and you will bring wisdom for God." And that was her thing. And it was short and concise. And I thought, well, that's like probably true, because she's seeing what already has happened. And, I was thinking maybe she's leaning on some sort of psychic power. She's already noticed that I've been through, bulimia and anorexia at this point, and I got through that. I discovered some wisdom. I had no idea what was coming, but she was spot on, because it was, years after that. I believe it was about 2 years later, the real challenges started to kick in. And these were the school of hard knocks that I had to grow my wisdom through, be refined in the fire. So it began with anxiety attacks and depression, and I ultimately had to stay in the house for a couple of months because I developed agoraphobia. And that was a real interesting thing, where you're afraid to leave even one little spot in the room. It's a really challenging conundrum in the mind, because it's all in the mind. And you have all of these what-if thoughts, and your world becomes so small and narrow. It's a true hell on earth situation. And then when I got through that, I realized that that was nothing, because that was just a subset of what came to be that I got diagnosed with chronic late-stage Lyme disease. And that was just part of the neurological suffering that was involved. So I was down about 40 pounds lighter by that time. I had gone from a robust 200-pound, 210-pound plus bodybuilding frame down to about 160 pounds of skin and bone, withering away, couldn't walk anymore. My hands would shake when I would hold my guitar or cups, and it was traumatic to say the least. And then ultimately years had gone by, and I began to improve dramatically from that. And just when I thought that was bad, just when I thought I'd seen the end of it, right? Now get this. So then I have this headache for like 10 days, and then I go into the ER, which is a big mistake. And they put an IV in my arm, and they put 6 drugs in there. And I went into shock. I blacked out. I literally thought I was dying at that point. Who knows? Maybe I did. And when I got up, my legs buckled. I couldn't stand. My nervous system had totally collapsed. And then I kept going into shock about every other day at the latest. And that was even far worse than Lyme disease at the late stage. And that was watching my life pass before me like almost every day. I went over 36 times to the emergency room during that bout. And that's when I really knew that if I don't get my act together and really turn to God wholeheartedly and figure out what these people had discovered, like Phineas Parker's Quimby and Mary Baker Eddy and John G. Lake. See, I had known about all this all along because I had searched because of the repeated bouts of illnesses, but I had no clue how important it was going to be, because I thought, well, it's really, really bad at this point, but, could it possibly get worse than that? Yes, it could. It could possibly get worse. And in reality, by the grace of God, we are saved. And this is what I want to tell you, is that whatever is coming at you right now, I want to let you know that I have seen some depths of despair that I would surmise that less than 1% of people on the planet will ever come to know, even if they go through a death-defying illness and that they find that they, lose their capacity at that time. Because I did that many times. And what I have noticed is that this principle, and this is from firsthand knowledge now, the principle that I write about, that others have discovered, that Phineas Parker's Quimby had discovered, that he relayed to Mary Baker Eddy, that she wrote about in Christian Science, this idea that you are coming from the healing, like John G. Lake has professed, and Curry Blake talks about, and how Andrew Womack, all of these guys are saying, and not just guys, but I say that in the plural term of people, they're saying there is a reality subset that is wholly separate from the material dream of existence. And your capacity to use free will to turn to that is it's the fulcrum of strength. It's the fulcrum of power. It is David's fulcrum. David, if you understand any of the esoteric teachings of what that means, I don't have time to get into it here, but it is the fulcrum of power. And when you turn your thought to first principle idea, regardless of what the material dream is saying, the material dream cannot destroy life because it never had life. And you may have to experience the death process to get there if you lack for wisdom. But when you have acquired wisdom, which is what this course has given you in a short 5-series truncated version of what has taken me decades to discover, I want to submit this to you. It doesn't take decades to walk in wisdom. It just takes a decision. You don't have to go through the fire again and again and again to give your whole heart to this idea that you're the image, likeness, and reflection of God and that the principal idea is goodness alone. Even in the testimonial below, where Nolan is talking about how these two relationship couple are fighting, and he started using the PTT and holding to the idea, God is all, God is love. That's how I saved my marriage. You see, that's how I saved my marriage and destroyed years and years of these little pet peeves that people hold between each other that become big, giant chasms that separate them from one another, and they start growing at a different path, and they start growing apart so rapidly that they look back after a few years and they don't even recognize who they are anymore or who they were, and they start to fall apart so distantly that there seems to be no hope. Now, that all happened in the material dream. None of that ever existed. So I collapsed that whole entire dream of lies during the lockdown, which was the hardest time. See, the persecution came, and it was the blessing that caused me to save the marriage. The persecution is your blessing, is what I'm telling you. There is only the blessing, is what I'm telling you. What you see, what you think that appears to be threatening is non-power, because there is no threat and there is no human mind which a threat could derive from. You know, the human mind of your avatar could say, well, you know, this body's going to give out and it's over for me. There is no human mind. The avatar is a projection. All emanates from the one, and you are a ray like the ray. See, the ray worshiping the sun. That is the true essence of your life. It can't be taken from you. And when you hold steadfast to that, and you surrender to it, and you use the daily PTT, as the Gnostic Gospels have declared, you will dissolve matter within yourself. And when you dissolve matter within yourself, then you are of the light. They say the light body. You have the light body. God is light. God is love. You are the reflection and image and likeness of God. You are the child or progeny, offspring, son, descendant of God. The only man is the one manifest of divine creation, which is the living human imagination of spirit. There is no counterfeit material fiction that ever was created in the mind of God, so therefore it doesn't exist. It's a shadow world. It's an illusion. It's like a mud puddle. When you see a statue erected, okay, you see the mud puddle reflecting the opposite direction. The mud puddle is lying to you. That's what the world of form is. It's inversion. That's why all of the, secret society rituals are always using mirrors and things that depict that right in plain sight that it's all fiction. They use mirrors to reflect their image and likeness back to mesmerize those in the middle place and get them bound in human reasoning so that they won't look to the principal idea, so that they are bound by sorcery and ignorance. So the PTT comes to disrupt all that. It breaks the sequence of timing. It puts you on the path to the present of the presence, and it puts you in the flow of divine mind, flow state outside of reasoning, and therefore you're in the mind of God, connecting the circuit of good, and the continuity is established, and therefore there is no circuit breaker experience where you are off in the wilderness like the prodigal son in a distant land that is foreign to your own true nature. That's what human reality is. Hue is the coloring of, and man is manifestation. It is the mud puddle reflecting the fiction of the false material senses, when the reality is the erected, the statutes of God, not the statutes of mortals. This is very, very intense wisdom coming at you at a rapid speed. You will only know by application. You can't know it by thinking it. It's not a thinking man's game. It's a demonstration principle where it supersedes the thinking man's game, and it starts to bring to reality the trueness and the wholeness of spirit in the midst of what is lying and deceitful, trickery, sorcery, falseness. So yes, you better believe persecution is coming. It's coming whether you choose wisdom or not. It's a matter of choosing wisdom and turning that persecution into stepping stones to a higher degree of consciousness, or stumbling and letting persecution steamroll over you, because for lack of wisdom, my people shall perish. And so a pastor is called, a minister is called to bring forth out of the tongue the babble, okay? The foolishness of men. God can even reach you through the foolishness of men. So even though this baseball cap wearing, gym clothes wearing, I'm not wearing a white robe and I have a beard and I'm trying to play all the image games with you, and I'm not wearing a three-piece suit and flying around in perfect private jets trying to impress you. I don't require any of that in my reality to prosper, and neither do you, because it's not about the fiction, it's about the fact. And when you have the fact, you chuckle and you laugh at the fiction, because it's nothing. That's the point. In the last video, I read from the oldest known Christian Gospels recorded. And it's plain as day. You can read it for yourself. And the entire Nag Hammadi library is chock full of it. Even the Eastern religions are all chock full of it. Everybody who has pierced through the veil and has discovered the true self, the I am self presence within, realizes that you must forfeit the temporal, the natural, the dream of the five senses. And then you peg yourself to the real in your personal thought awareness. And you stay rooted in it regardless of what the outer is doing. The outer is nothing but transitory, temporal fiction. And when you find the true self within, you are walking in victory already. You are of the light and you are carried by wisdom. And wisdom is sufficient for every human need, which, by the way, transcends you out of the dream of karmic suffering. All karma is action, cellular memory, and reaction. That's the three components of karma. Action, cellular memory, and reaction is the wheel, okay? The wheel of reincarnation. And see, it's not just about long cycles of reincarnation where one mortal shows up again and again on the fictional trajectory of mortality. What it is it's the wheel of recycling of the laws that sustain the material continuity of falsehood. And so we step out of that like stepping up from the gutter. We step up into spiritual awareness of the presence I am, and we realize that it is whole, complete, it is perfect now, forever established in its own continuity of goodness, and cannot be moved, cannot be broken, and nothing can come against its reflection to its man or its manifest of its own knowledge and creation. And when you get that, and you start to peg yourself to it, and you start to break the TikTok dream and destroy the continuity of all the false evidence appearing real of fear, and you start to say, you know what? Nothing can be taken from God. God is still intact. I live, move, and have my being in God. What, therefore, can come against God? Once you remove you, as in identifying as a separate thing, a vessel, a construct in time and space, a physical mortal, once you remove you and you turn wholeheartedly to God and think what God knows to be true, you begin dissolving matter within yourself, and the persecution comes because it is seeking completion. It is a deficiency from the beginning. It has no root, and therefore you should not take it seriously. Let it come and turn your thought back to divine principle and refuse to be moved. That is what Psalm 91 is all about, and Psalm 23, and many, many, many other of the Psalms, and including all of the books in the Bible. They're all genuinely trying to express this tension of polarities in a material dream where the dielectric is causing the agitation from out of the stillness of rest, and then the propensity of the principle seeking rest within itself to govern all creation. And so once we let that governance be of the sound mind of goodness alone, of God, we begin to collapse all of those twin duality forces, because they all boil down to one erring, false belief that there is power in evil. That is the capstone of where all sorcery gains its foothold, is in personal thought, stemming from the idea that there are two powers and one of them is evil. And that, in fact, it has any say whatsoever, any jurisdiction, any law, any capacity to come against divine principle. And that is an absolute fabricated lie. It is a liar from the beginning. And what do we know about that? That's Satan. Turning away from first principle in your personal thought is the personification of what they call Satan in the Bible. Turning back in your personal thought is the repentance of the prodigal son that brings home the captive, and it separates the truth from the fiction, like splitting the Red Sea, and you return home. That's your journey here. You have 3 things to do, and I'll repeat them. To see, feel, and be perfection. And you can accomplish this through the daily practice of daily PTT. And the more you contemplate wisdom, the more wisdom becomes part of your experience. And what the nature of wisdom is it corrects by supplying all deficiency with the light of truth. And so don't be alarmed when more deficiency comes up from within the heart of men, within the beliefs of mortality that have been carried along by you for quite some time. They're coming forward for you to correct and destroy that which is deficient. It is an inside job. It's within you. You bear the light of the Christ. And the Christ overcame the world. You already overcame the world. I repeat, you already overcame the world. There's only 3 things God, the source, deity, is looking for. For you to know, for you to love, and for you to trust the almighty hand of God. And in closing, I'll just let you know that it is perfect love that will cast out all fear. And perfect love is the knowledge of God applied that becomes the experiential awareness of God in your life. Take advantage of the training below if you'd like. We'll work it one-on-one, and I will customize a 30-day action strategy and blueprint just for you. What you can accomplish in a few days is nothing compared to what you can accomplish in a month, what you can accomplish in 6 months, what you can accomplish in a year. While I know there's no clock time and no tick-tock linear progression of thought, what I do know is that the repetitioning or the repetition of daily habits becomes your destiny. And if we dial in the perfect daily habits, we will dial in the perfect destiny for you, and it's just a mathematical certainty at that point. That is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you to do this with me, because this is the time. This is the season. This is the calling, if wisdom has chosen you. Don't put off God, and God will not put you off. Think about that. Also, you can get a physical copy of the book, and you'll fill it out, and I will help you lay it all out so it's perfectly suited and tailored for you. It's exactly what I would want if I were in your shoes, and that's why I'm offering it. And it's at a fair donation for the time that'll be received and for the effort generated to go into what you're going to get out of it. If you don't think you can make an additional $200 from this wisdom, then you don't know the price of wisdom. You haven't experienced what it takes to gain wisdom. Remember in the beginning when I told you, the wisdom I have gained, the price I paid, was all of the experiences that it took to gain that conviction. And see, my belief can overcome your doubt. my belief can overcome your hesitancy. My conviction can lend support to you in the places where you seem to be unstable or undetermined to move forward. And by giving you that extra nudge and that extra clarity and that extra proven plan of action, it just might be the very thing that takes you to the level that you've always dreamed of. And the reason why you don't have what you don't have is because you don't know what you don't know. And that's what we aim to solve in our time together. I'll see you there when you're ready. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this. And as a last reminder, I do believe my manifesto that was written in 2021 is the book Trust, the Most Powerful Force in the Universe, which you can also pick up for a few dollars on Amazon. Get a physical copy of it. I'd recommend you upgrade to the physical copy and put it in your library. And it comes with a workshop that's valued at $777 that gives you all of the strategies and techniques that I've relied upon for years and years and years to perform at the highest capacity in all stages, in all venues. And it's done many, many, many miracles for me and others. And also a contributor, Ula Arvid, who's a very high achiever in many areas, gave one of the most powerful talks on the secret of the law of attraction that I think very few people actually ever will understand. And you get all of that for a few bucks if you'd want it. So choose your path, take action, and don't let confusion stand in the way of certain victory. Know that you come from victory. You belong in victory. And only your decision can hold you back. So make the right decision, and I'll see you on the other side.